Hey guys, thank you for joining me today. Let me introduce myself. So my name is Raul, and I go by the name of Fundamental. So today we will be learning how to paint a sunset background. This will help you learn how to blend acrylic paints. Um, so just to kind of start off, I am using Liquitex acrylic heavy body paints. So I like using these just because it's a heavy viscosity, so it's a heavy paint. But you can dilute it with water, or it's called Liquitex slow dry blending medium. So this kind of waters down the acrylic paints. That way, it's kind of a softer uh, form of the paints. That way, you can kind of blend them easier. So it's kind of up to you on how you like, if you like heavier or softer acrylic paints, but I just like to go with the heavy body acrylics. So just to kind of continue on with the color palette, so we have, for the sunset, we'll be using already mixed all of these, so I'm pretty sure you can find these already kind of mixed if you go to an art store. But we have a yellow in here, we have an orange, we have a magenta, a violet, and a black. So that's what we will be using to blend a sunset background. So I also have it's gonna be a chisel and flat brush. So this is good for blending acrylics, especially since we'll just have a big kind of open canvas where we can use a large amount of acrylics to blend. So this brush is going to be good enough to be able to blend different colors into each other. So we'll be starting off with a yellow. So we'll be working with lighter to darker colors. So we'll start off with yellow, and yellow is going to go down on the bottom. And also, just to mention, I'll be doing painting a sunset background, and then right here at the bottom I just put some tape just to divide it. I'll be painting just like a body of water, so I just kind of taped it off just to kind of divide what parts to not paint. So we'll be starting off with yellow, so you can just grab a decent amount, and then just kind of brush it all along the bottom part right here. So just kind of work your way with the brush and the paint, and then just make sure this part right here, you just kind of make sure you hit the spots. I'll grab some more paint. Alright, so then what I want to do is just grab some water and just dip your paintbrush in here. And what we want to do is just make sure to rinse off all the yellow paint from the brush. That way, once we start off with the orange, there's no mix of yellow paint. And then I do have a rag in here, so just kind of brushing off the water. Alright, so then we'll continue with an orange. So just grab a decent amount and just continue applying over on top of the yellow. And by the way, this type of brush, the chisel end brush, it's really good if you want to kind of make long straight brush strokes. It's kind of ideal for that as well, so just to kind of keep in mind. Just continue to work your way up. And just making sure that you kind of have an even end from starting point to the end point. So I'll just kind of add a little bit more orange over on this side just to kind of even out the level. And then just kind of work your way down at the bottom where the orange and the yellow meet. And this is where you can start to kind of just play around with your brush and just kind of work your way in between both orange and yellow. So I'm just gonna rinse my brush really quick. What I will want to do is grab a little bit more of yellow in order to blend with the orange. And just kind of keep in mind that the acrylic paints right now have not dried completely, so it's kind of a good time to still blend. Acrylic paints do tend to dry pretty quickly, so just kind of make sure that you work along with the acrylic paints as long as, you know, before they dry out. So just gonna grab some yellow, just making sure to apply it in between the orange and the yellow. So I'm gonna go ahead and just use my brush and just kind of work my way along. So I'll just go ahead and apply a little bit more of yellow. We'll just be applying more at the end. So just making sure you do like a sweeping motion with the brush, and you can start to see both the orange and the yellow starting to blend. So that's what we would like to see. And just kind of keep it lightly with the brush. Just a sweeping motion. Alright, awesome. So it seems pretty good. So we just have first, we have the yellow and then the orange. And now we'll just continue off with the magenta. So once again, just making sure to rinse my brush with water and just kind of make sure you rinse away the orange and the yellow from the brush. And just a tip, I like to use a glass container to have water to kind of rinse my brushes. Just because if it's like a plastic, it tends to flip over easy. So I just kind of like to use a glass container just because of the weight. They won't tip off really quickly. So just a tip for that. Alright, so then brush is pretty clean now. So what I want to do now is grab the magenta, grab a decent amount, and then start applying it above the orange. So again, just kind of work your way all across. And you see how nice and even you can work with the brush, you know, just from one way, from a starting point onto the end point. And just grab more magenta. And then just making sure that we keep it even. So from one end to the other, just making sure we kind of have an even level. Let's just grab a little bit more. And just kind of work your way from the starting point to the end point. Alright, so kind of have an even level, pretty close. So what I want to do is now work my way from the magenta to the orange. So what I'm going to do is rinse my brush. So just rinse the magenta off the brush. And then I want to add some orange. In order to blend both the magenta and the orange. Right, so just make sure you dry off the brush. And then just add some orange. Just a decent amount. And we're going to work our way from the starting point to the end point. So again, I'm going to apply some orange and then just kind of work my way using a brush like a sweeping motion. Just kind of work your way along, sweeping motion. And you can start to see both the magenta and orange start to blend. So that's what, you know, that's what we want it to happen. So just make sure you do a sweeping motion and just kind of keep the brush nice and gentle. You know, that way you can kind of have a nice, smooth, just kind of a blend between both. So now we just blended magenta and orange and then the yellow. So the next step is to add a violet, which is going to be the dark. It's going to be the color after magenta. So just making sure we rinse our brush. Yeah, just make sure, just rinse the magenta off completely. Alright, so what we want to do next is grab a decent amount of violet and just kind of work the same. Just work our way from the starting point onto the end point. Just kind of even out the level from the starting point to the end point. Just grab a little bit more amount of the violet paint. And just kind of making sure you keep it consistent. Right, awesome. So then what we want to do is, so we have an even level of the violet. So now we just want to blend the magenta and the violet. So what I want to do is rinse my brush. And then just go ahead and dry the brush. And then what I want to do is go back to the magenta and just grab a decent amount. And then we'll start to blend violet and magenta. So just again, from the starting point onto the end point. So just again, we'll be doing a sweeping motion with the brush. So just kind of go back and forth. Keep it nice and gentle. Just grab a little bit more and just kind of work closer to the end point. Alright, so just a little bit more. Alright, so we can see there's kind of a nice blend between the violet and the magenta. So the last step is going to be applying the black at the top. So I'm going to be rinsing my brush one more time. Right, so then I'm gonna grab black, grab a decent amount, and now we'll just be covering the last section. So just making sure we just fill up the whole section with black. You can just see how nice and even you can get of a brush stroke, making sure you have a nice amount of paint on the brush. And then just kind of go back and forth. Right, so just making sure we're kind of careful with near the horizon of the violet and the black. Alright, and then the next step is going to be applying more violet. That way we can blend between the violet and the black. So just one more time, I'll just be rinsing my brush. Alright, so we'll grab some violet and then just kind of work our way from the starting point onto the end point. Just again, just a nice sweeping motion. Nice sweeping motion. I'll grab more violet and then just kind of work my way to the end point. Nice sweeping motion. So just going back and forth. Alright, awesome. So it seems like we have a nice blend between the violet and the black. So right now, the next step would be to... So what we want to do is, since it's going to be a sunset background, the paint is still fresh right now. Well, at least the black and the violet. So what we can do right now, so I'll be using, I have a Liquitex white spray paint. So this one's it's a transparent white, but still gonna work. So I'll just kind of be adding white sprinkles kind of around like the darker area, and just kind of to resemble kind of like stars. So just want to make sure if you have a spray paint can, just make sure to shake it up really well. Okay, so what I'll be doing next is just making sure, so you'll just want to be careful. So if you have a spray can, just making sure you have a nice clean new cap. That way, you know, you get the best results when you try to, you know, paint. So we'll be careful. We'll just kind of be pressing this very lightly. Don't want to press it all the way, otherwise you'll just get a bunch of, you know, white paint. So just kind of being careful, very light and gentle, just kind of making sure you kind of press towards like the back area of the cap. But what we just want to do is kind of have kind of just like little sprinkles of white paint just kind of going all over. So you just want to grab a cardboard or just kind of a surface and just kind of testing it out. So you just want to press very lightly, not pressing all the way, and you can kind of see you get this kind of like just white sprinkle. So that's what we want to get. So you can kind of first just test it out on the cardboard or just somewhere else, and then once you feel kind of confident, you can kind of go ahead and apply it to the painting. So just kind of making sure, just kind of gentle. I'll just kind of be spraying the cap, and then you can kind of see, very gentle. Just kind of continue pressing. All right. Just one more time. All right, so you can see we now added some like white sprinkles just to kind of resemble like the stars, you know, at night. And just kind of making sure we kind of add it more towards like the darker area, not really towards the like the yellow and like the orange. So now the next step is going to be we can remove the tape. Right, so the next step is going to be, I want to add some blue here at the bottom. So just want to make sure I rinse my brush really well, since I don't want none of these, you know, none of the colors that I just used to kind of mix in here. It's just kind of making sure you blend the blue. I'll be using blue and white, so just kind of making sure those two only blend down here, and not none of the other colors that I use. So just making sure you rinse the brush really well. Right, so the next step is going to be just grabbing some paint, some painter's tape, and just kind of taping off the opposite side. So first I had the tape here, and I kind of marked a line, but now just kind of making sure that the yellow paint has kind of dried off. So now I'll just kind of be taping the opposite side of where I kind of marked a line. Just making sure that once we paint this part, we won't paint the top, you know, yellow part. So just kind of taping it off, and just kind of making sure you spread the tape evenly. That way, once we're painting and once we remove the paint, we won't see. That way we can have a nice crisp line once removing the tape. So just kind of making sure you spread the tape really well. Alright, so then I'll be using blue. So I did not have space to apply it to the color palette, so I'll just kind of apply it on the canvas. Right, so just kind of go ahead and apply the paint. And just another thing to keep in mind. So here at the at the tape part. So just kind of making sure you don't want to overload paint with the tape, because sometimes if you do that, once you take away the tape, there might be high chances of the paint kind of going underneath. So just kind of making sure we go gentle near the tape and not overload it with paint. So just kind of going gentle near the tape. Awesome. And then just work your way all the way down. Alright, so we covered the whole area down here with blue. So the next step is going to be, we'll be adding white near the middle section, and that's just going to be just to add some kind of like a reflection, like a light reflection. So I just kind of have a some paper to kind of block it off, but you just kind of want to paint. So in this case, you can just kind of go easy, don't overload the paint, especially since it's just a small section. But I'll just kind of be using some paper just to kind of block off any paint going over. You guys can see that. Okay. So just shake your can well, and then just kind of work your way. Cool. So then I applied some white spray paint, and then my blue paint's still fresh, so that's it's still workable. So I'll just want to make sure I just kind of brush back and forth and just kind of leave some strokes, some white and blue strokes. So just kind of work back and forth. Right, so I'll be adding more. So once again, apply some white. And I just have I'll just work along with a small chisel end brush, so just to kind of go back and forth and just kind of create some strokes in between. So you can see there's some buildup of the paint. So I'll just apply more white paint. So you can start to see there's white in between. So you can kind of start to see there's some kind of like light. So that's what we want to create, just to create some kind of like light, and the white, you know, in between will help to create light. And then we also, so I'll just kind of be letting the paint dry off a little bit, just to, once it's a little closer to a dry point, that way I can kind of go one more time back and forth and just kind of create a some brush strokes. Alright, and then the last step is going to be adding some clouds. So in this case I have, I just grabbed a cloud stencil and I just kind of cut it off. So there's a bunch of cloud stencils that you can find, but I just kind of chose this one, so I just cut it out. So what we want to do is shake your paint one more time. So what we want to do is you want to place the cloud stencil, and just kind of making sure you use the whole space. We can kind of just start off like near this end, and we can kind of use half of the stencil, and just making sure that we kind of go lightly closer to this section and not so much over here, because otherwise with spray paint, it's going to leave a mark, and we don't want that. So we just want to make sure we leave a mark for these edges and not this straight edge. So just kind of making sure we go nice and easy. I'll be just kind of starting off. Right, so we just added one part of the stencil, and just kind of being careful not to kind of keeping it steady. Otherwise, with the paint in here, if you kind of smear it, there might be a chance that you can also smear some paint, which will kind of make it look messy. So just kind of making sure you keep it close as possible, and then just making sure to not move your stencil. Otherwise, you can kind of you'll get like a messy look of the stencil. So just making sure you keep it steady. So again, just kind of be applying the stencil down and just keeping it steady. You see, it's just kind of leaving a nice clean outline stencil. So that's what we want to do. So we'll just kind of work our way up. And then I'll just be working over on this side, just at the other end. And then I'll be adding, so you can see right now there's like paint buildup, so just kind of be careful. You don't want the paint that has built up here on the stencil to kind of smear down on what you're painting. So you can let it dry, that way you just don't have the risk of the paint buildup kind of going down. You can let it dry, so just kind of make sure about that as you're trying to paint your cloud stencils. Right, so as you can see, just added like about 5 or 6 times of the stencil, so that kind of creates a look of clouds. So see if I can move this. Alright, so I'll be adding a little bit more. So again, just keeping it steady. Then one more time over on that side. Now just one more time, I'll be adding some white just to kind of create that depth of light. Awesome. So we can see we have the nice even blends between the yellow, the orange, magenta, violet, and black. And then down here having the blue and just kind of creating light, adding white in the center. And then just using cloud stencils to kind of add some clouds above. So I'll just be taking off the paint. You can see it's a nice clean etch. You know, making sure that you spread the tape evenly. That way, once you take off the tape, you have a nice clean crisp line. So that's what we want to get. And eventually, you can use this with spray paint. But I just decided to show you guys how to work with acrylic paints, just because you can do so much with acrylic paints. So I know lots of times the question is how to blend paints. So this was just kind of a quick way to show you guys how to work with blending acrylic paints. You know, in this case we created a sunset, so something simple, but you can kind of see, making sure you have your paints. And by the way, this is like a color palette, so I like to use, so it has like a sponge, and so the way it works is it's a sponge, and you just wet it, and then just making sure you place it on the tray. And then this is paper designed for acrylic paints, so it's kind of like your palette. So you gotta wet this in hot water, and then afterwards you just place it on the tray. And then, you know, this helps to keep your acrylic paints from drying out. So you can use this color palette for several weeks, since acrylic paints tend to dry pretty quickly. This is kind of ideal if you like working with acrylic paints. You can use this color palette tray, and it keeps your acrylic paints, it keeps them workable, so you know they won't dry out. So you know, I highly recommend this. And I recommend Liquitex paints. You know, they're really good to work with. And then just to make sure, all of these were opaque, so you'll see if there's a full colored in rectangle, that means it's opaque. So just kind of making sure when working with, like for example with a sunset, just making sure the colors that you get are opaque, because there is transparent or translucent paint colors, and that really won't work well. So just making sure that you have opaque colors for that. And I also suggest this helps to blend paints quicker, and it kind of helps to, or not quicker, but it helps to blend paints really smooth. So if you're having trouble trying to blend, you know, the paints together, I can recommend this. And it's also, it helps to keep the paints active and not drying so quickly. So I didn't add this on a color palette just because the paper, since it's moist, it keeps the paints fresh. So I didn't have to use this, but just as another option, in case if you're having trouble trying to blend colors, I highly suggest this. So yeah, that's about it. Any questions, just let me know. And yeah, hope you have fun with it. I hope you give it a try, and if you do, you can tag it right below on the video, and I would love to see your work. So just have fun with it, trust the process, and yeah, just keep pushing and keep doing art. So thanks guys for watching. You guys have a great day. Thank you.